viewers, welcome to the IT Explained channel. So today we'll be talking about Active Directory domain services. So I'll show you how to set up the Active Directory. Okay, so firstly we'll log into the EXXI server. So if you don't know what it is, it's a hypervisor. If you need help setting up a EXXI server, let me know and I can guide you through. Okay, so firstly we're going to go to the virtual machines, and I'm going to start by selecting create a new virtual machine. Okay, so now we're going to give like a reasonable name for the machine. So in our instance we're going to create a domain controller. So I'm going to name it IT Explained Easy dash DC01. Okay, so now I'm gonna choose the version of EXXI, what kind of OS it is. So it's a Windows based OS, and I'm gonna select Windows Server 2016 64-bit or later. Okay, so now we're gonna configure the base requirement for the virtual machine. So I'm gonna select the enable CPU hot add so that we can add CPU in future. Also, we need to do a memory hot plug so that if we need to increase the memory requirement later in the future. And I'm gonna choose thin provision for the hard drive so that the hard drive space is dynamically assigned. And also I'm gonna choose the data store ISO, and I've selected the Windows Server 2019 ISO. Okay, and another thing that's remaining is choosing the right network adapter to plug into this virtual machine. Okay, our base level virtual machine is ready. Now we need to install the operating system. So I'm just going to start the virtual machine now. Okay, just hit enter to boot from the ISO file. Okay, so here we're going to choose the language to install. So it's going to be English Australia. You need to make sure you choose the right language and the right time zone. Otherwise there's going to be issue when your server goes live. Okay, so I'm just going to install the trial version of Windows Server 2019. So I'm going to select the standard evaluation with desktop experience. Make sure you select the desktop experience, otherwise your server will be only usable through a command line. Okay, so accept the license agreement. So I'm choosing the hard drive that I allocated earlier, 150 gig. Okay, so I'm going to choose the partition with the most space. And now the Windows installation has started. So now the installation is finished and the virtual machine is restarting now. Okay, so installation is finished now and we're at the very initial login phase. So here you'll choose a password for your server login, but just remember that the default login will always be administrator. Okay, so once the initial password setup is complete, so now we'll again hit Control Delete and now log in as administrator with the password we just created. So now we're inside the Windows server, so I'm going to open the server manager. So every time a new server is installed, there's like few housekeeping things we have to do to make sure the server runs right. So I'm going to take you through the server manager and show you those things. Okay, so I'm gonna go to local server. So first thing first, I'm gonna change the IP address of the server because we don't want a server to have a dynamic IP address, because if we do a dynamic IP address, then there's going to be lots of issues where if the server turns off, then the IP changes and you'll not be able to ping back to the server. So in this scenario, I'm just going to give it the IP of 10.136.36.1 and the subnet mask at 255.255.255.0. And for the default gateway, I'm just going to point it towards my router. So it's going to be 10.136.33.254. And for DNS, I'm not going to set up DNS server for this domain controller. So I'm just going to, for now, put it at 8888 or 1111. Okay, so now our IP address for the server has changed from dynamic to static, so it will not change. Another few things that I normally like to change once I set up the server is the firewall setting, because normally I would like to manage the server through remote desktop connection, and sometimes Windows Firewall creates an issue. So for this instance, I'll just turn it off. And another thing I like to do is enable remote desktop. Since we haven't installed the Active Directory features yet, so I'm just going to leave it as allow from any connection, but later on you can specify which user can remotely into this computer. And also I like to turn the Internet Explorer security settings off. And the last thing we need to do is change the name of the server, because right now system has given it a default or like a random name. So I'm going to change it now to ITEE-DC01. And also you can see that now we are on a work group. We're not a part of a domain. So once we install the Active Directory feature, this server is going to turn into a domain controller. So once you rename the server, you have to restart the server. Okay, so the server has restarted now. So we're gonna log in as administrator and our password. Okay, so I'm opening the server manager now. So now the next step is installing the Active Directory features on the server. Okay, so let's go ahead and install the feature by selecting add role and feature option. So I'm going to choose the role based or feature based. So by default, since there's just one server, it's selected. So now I'm going to choose Active Directory Domain Service and add feature. So while adding this feature, we can also install other features such as DNS or DHCP server, but we're not going to touch that for now, and we're just going to make it a simple Windows Server 2019 which has Active Directory feature. Okay, so now the installation for Active Directory is finished, but there's still a post installation setup we have to do. Okay, if you click on that flag there, so we have to configure the deployment now. So first I'll select with add a new forest.
So this is very important here. So here, whatever name you choose will be your name new domain. So I've chosen itexplainedEasy.com.au. When you put in the domain name, you always have to make sure you either put .com or .eu or whatever after a dot. So this is like I have to choose like how low level my server will function with, and also the password for directory services restore mode. So when you're going to configure the DNS, so now it's going to validate the net bias name, which was ITExplainedEasy. Okay, so the net bias name is valid now. So we'll just hit next to continue with the setup. Okay, so let's move to the next screen now. So we're going to leave everything here as it is. If you wanted, you could choose a different location to store sysvol information or logs or database. Okay, let's move on to the next screen. So now this is like a final validation. Okay, it is showing some flags there, but overall all the validation has passed. So I'm just gonna hit next. Okay, so all the post deployment setup is complete now, so the server is going to restart. Okay, so now I've connected to the server using remote desktop, and also this time I've used the login which equates to my domain name slash my username and the password. So in this case, it'll be the domain name would be ITExplainedEasy slash administrator and whatever password you choose. Okay, so now I'm opening the server manager. Just so you know, this time I've logged in as a domain administrator and not local administrator. So let's go to the local server. It's still loading, so it's a little bit slow. Okay, so now you can see we're at local server now. Three things here. So if you look at the domain, you can see now the domain is itexplainedeasy.com.au. Okay, now let's open Active Directory. So if you do dsa.msc, it will open Active Directory users and computers. So in here you can see our top level domain is itexplainedeasy.com.au, and underneath there is where all the users would be created. But instead of using that default space, we'll be creating various OUs in coming videos.